This is EJ Chats with the NAACP, and EJ stands for Environmental Justice Chats. Peace. What's going on? This is Marcus Sibley, your chairman, NAACP, New Jersey State Conference, Environmental and Climate Justice Committee. Excited to bring you another installment of EJ Chats with the NAACP. I'm really excited. We've had a brief hiatus as we fought to, stop pollution and cleaning the air and everything. But now we're back. We're back with another really exciting episode. I'm really blown away that we were able to get this individual. She is busy as busy can be, and I'm so grateful that we get a couple minutes with her. So without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, let me introduce Jackson Heights' own Randy Watts. No, I'm kidding. This is I cannot pass up an opportunity to do a Coming to America reference. But I'd like to introduce to you a new friend, but also a colleague at the National Wildlife Federation, Corina Newsome. How are you doing today?
I'm excellent. I'm truly honored to be here with you and to be fellowshipping virtually with the NAACP folks. So thank you so much for having me, and I'm excited for our conversation. Growing up, I was always a huge wildlife fan, and I think a lot of kids like wildlife, from a young age, but that kind of gets almost beaten out of them by the world, right? Those STEM, interests that they have, whether it's wildlife or whatever it might be. Thankfully, I was privileged to be in a household that really nurtured my love for wildlife, even though I lived in Germantown in Philly, which I didn't. Now, actually going back home, I see that there was maybe more to notice than I knew because I didn't have any environmental educators in my life. But growing up, I didn't notice or detect any kind of wildlife really at all around me. And so my mom, my dad, my grandparents would give me wildlife books, magazines. And so that's kind of how I was feeding my imagination and feeding my passion. And but because I didn't have any experts in the environment or in wildlife, the stuff that was there, and there is stuff there, there's stuff everywhere, there's wildlife everywhere. The wildlife that was there, I didn't notice because there wasn't anyone to point that out to me. And so reflecting back, I recognize that as an inflection point, how much is missed when kids don't have somebody to point out the life around them. It wasn't until I was almost about to graduate high school and I didn't know what I wanted to do. I know I loved wildlife, but I didn't really want to be a veterinarian. What does someone who likes animals do? I literally had no idea because I didn't know anyone who worked with wildlife professionally. And just literally by happenstance, somebody at my church was like, my sister works at the zoo. I gave her your number, she'll give you a call. And I was like, he was Black. So I'm like, your sister, I assume is Black. So what is she doing at the zoo? I literally assumed that she must be working in concessions or in some non-animal capacity. And it turned out she was the lead carnivore keeper at the Philadelphia Zoo, breeding endangered species, endangered carnivores, leading research efforts. My world blew wide open. I could not believe that. So, and I wish I would have had somebody like her, as a kid to help say, here's what the landscape looks like. Here's where your dreams could take you. I didn't have that until I was 17, but that's still earlier than a lot of people. And so I was grateful to grow up in a household that supported me. And just in the nick of time, right before I was about to make commitments to go to college, a Black woman, wildlife professional, entered my life, took me under her wing and showed me the ropes. And so that is kind of how I got into the field.
And I thank you so much for sharing that. And that's really, that's really exciting to me because we often speak about how representation matters. We say it, but I don't think we ever fully internalize the impact. As a young Black person, and as you pointed this out, who has an interest in wildlife and didn't get that until 17 years old, I hope people watching this understand the importance of mentorship.
Yes.
The importance of taking a few hours out of your month and connecting with a young person, because Corina Newsome said she was at a deficit until you met this person at a super opportune moment in your life story. Just the importance that all of us, the roles that we all can play and help shaping people. Absolutely. So I'm really, really good to hear. I'm really glad to hear that one little hookup that got you in contact with the right person set you on track to where you are today. And just, expounding on that, how does it feel to now be that person that other people are looking up to and looking for guidance and following your career to get cues on what steps to take? How does that feel now?
It really, honestly, is an honor, and I'm grateful for every opportunity, because I remember how that felt to meet one person. And I didn't see another Black person in my field until I was like 25, like in grad school, right? So I know how powerful one contact can be. And so I hold that with a lot of gratitude and care. And I go out of my way, not in any sort of like self-glorifying way, but just I seek out opportunities to make those connections, because I know what it did for me. And every time I have parents who reach out to me like, hey, my 13-year-old is really interested in wildlife. Can you just talk to her about your path, right? Seeing people's reaction to having one connection with someone like them.
Right.
I relate to it, and it feels like I'm reliving that over and over again. That's why, but it's not even over, right? I still have those moments as a mentee. Every time I meet a new Black biologist, somebody with their PhD, somebody doing wildlife management, right? I have that feeling all over again. And I'm collecting mentors. They serve as mentors for me. And so it's a constant cycle of being poured into and pouring into others. And I think that, folks who have been through it, like you and I have, like, we know how much that means. And it just comes naturally, really. And I'm grateful for the opportunity.
That's exciting. So in your perfect world, how could we create, like, if you had the magic wand and you can create a system where young Black kids can be connected with different professionals, especially because we have things like Zoom now, right? Like, in your perfect world, what would your setup be?
Well, there's actually some work coming down the pipe that is not mine to share yet, but some of the work that I know will be coming and that I hope to see kind of flourish in the future is when students learn in the classroom or on TV, right? I learned a lot about animals through TV, through books. 100% of the people I saw were white. I don't have any recollection of seeing a single non-white person, let alone a Black person, doing any of that, right? So one slice of it is, who are represented as experts, as the people who are knowledgeable about this in, media, in textbooks, things like that. And not just pictures, but like their actual expertise represented. Then when it comes to actual opportunities to learn, STEM programs and opportunities to get education, the efforts because there actually have been efforts that are led by Black people to connect young folks to STEM. I just wasn't connected to them. I didn't know about them. So how are we connecting students and injecting resources into efforts that Black people are leading to connect young people to exposure to these careers, right? And in the already existing programs that exist for career development, how are those, those being very much part of the curriculum, part of the internship, opportunities, part of all of that, the volunteering opportunities is easily available to Black children. And then once we get into the place where people are starting to actually think about, what do I want my life to look like, my career, and asking those questions, there being an actual network that you can tap into, right? It's not like random. Like it shouldn't be that the stars have to align perfectly for you to come in contact with a Black biologist. Like, you should be able to find them easily and reach them. And so, like, that would be my perfect world, is that the opportunities are reachable, the opportunities are being invested in so that they are available as much as possible, and that experts are accessible. Experts can have the opportunity to interface with young people thinking about their futures. And I'm really excited I hope to in the future have an update
I'm looking forward to that
being done. But yeah, it's very important, extremely meaningful.
I love that. And the fact that people are already thinking about this, and you may be wind of something coming down the pike, is really, really exciting. The way I've always thought about it, I've always felt like there needs to be more of a connection between our municipal and state government and different entities like this. Because for me, I feel mentorship is a valuable resource. And I would love it where a person could either get paid hours from their job to do mentorship during the day, and or reductions, like you put forth X amount of hours, that's X amount of dollars off of your energy bill, but that's X amount of dollars. Like, I want to incentivize people to create those bridges so that we can bring up our next crop of next leaders. Like, I think that's doable. Like, yes. I really do.
And I appreciate how systemic you think. Like, what are the actual mechanisms that could be instituted that make this possible or incentivize it, like you said? And I love that idea. I love that.
Yeah, let's incentivize. Like, I'm a huge proponent of, we're just in a day and time where you expect someone to do something for free. I'm really starting to see how much volunteerism is a luxury. Yes. Everybody does not have the ability to volunteer. So we need to incentivize people, because at the end of the day, whether it's paid or unpaid, there's things that need to happen.
Yep.
We need to mentor our young people. We need to provide avenues for career development. We need to provide internship opportunities. We need to get a lot of these organizations who every day talk about DEIJ recognize real DEIJ work is connecting young people to a pathway to get them to where they're going to be the next scientist, the next naturalist, conservation manager. Like, that's real justice work, is providing those opportunities. So now I'm interested in, because many people know you for your just bringing attention to birding. And offline, I'm going to run some by you. I'm going to invite you to something, because our I'm a director of National Wildlife Federation, and our New Jersey affiliate, World Series of Birding, is going to come, and we're having serious conversations putting a team together.
Yes. Okay. I'm in.
So I'm going to be reaching out to you offline about getting your schedule right.
I'm in.
Yeah. But with that being said, can you walk me through what it was like in those early stages of creating what a lot of people are seeing now? Like, it was, and of course I know it wasn't only you, but being a part of the process of bringing so much more attention to Black people who have a love for and passion for birds. Could you walk me through those early stages?
Yeah. So I remember I had just left like the zookeeping world where I was, and went back to school and to grad school in Georgia. And at this point, I still had not come in contact with other Black wildlife professionals after that first encounter, like at the Philly Zoo when I was a kid. And I remember for some class I had in school, they made us like get on social media. I was really anti-social media, was not present, didn't use it. And I just got on Twitter. And then I don't remember how it happened, but I remember I saw a Black person who was a birder. His name is Jeffrey Ward, actually. Cool guy. And I was like, I had a DM him. I was like, excuse me, so you like birds, right? Like, it wasn't even computing for me. And he was like, yeah. And then he was the first. And then there was second person, third person, until there was this like just network of people who came to realize that each other existed. And we were like, what? And so then Dr. Ray Wynn Grant, she's actually a carnivore biologist, Black woman. She suggested that we all get like in a group chat together, and it kind of went from there. So this like community of Black natural scientists and birders primarily, like, just ended up building community authentically through social media. Like, without it, I don't think it would have happened. And it was powerful to witness how much power was generated simply because we were together now. You know what I mean? Because we were all kind of isolated, and then we all existed, but we were isolated. Like, everywhere you look around, any one of us, we didn't see anyone else like ourselves. And so together we were like, wow, we can do a lot. And so it was really just kind of a support social kind of group. And then, there was in 2020, there was the incident in Central Park where Christian Cooper, who's a well-known birder, an excellent human being, was, had the police weaponized against him by a white woman in Central Park while he was birding. And that, like, that hit the
Black
news.
wild birding. That was
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. And it was, it hit the group chat, and a friend of mine named Anna, who's in that group chat, she was like, "Did y'all see this? Like, we have to do something about this." And like people literally just started putting ideas, like, what if we like have several days of like advocacy, right? What if we have a week? Like, what if we, right? And like within 2 days, this whole like Black Birders Week idea came about, and like we made it happen. And then that was another launch pad. Not only now we didn't just have the, kind of, 100 people in a group chat that we had formed on Twitter. Now it was like a network of people around the globe, thousands of Black people who love birds, who love wildlife. And we were like, what? Right? It really opened up a whole new world for me personally, and for us collectively, like just as people who love our Blackness and who love wildlife. And then suddenly because I always felt like that my love of wildlife and nature was kind of separate from who I was. Like it wasn't compatible. And that's the result of not seeing a lot of people like yourself, right? Exactly. And then I was like, wow, wait. And one of my friends, Jason Hall, put it well. He was like, this is part of my Blackness. It's not like separate from my Blackness. You know what I mean? And that feels different. That feels so good. And so that's kind of how that was my experience in that process. And I am so privileged and thankful to have been part of that community, and part of this community that continues to grow. And we really have been able, people that I don't even know, but people have been able to build capacity because they're together now. And we are building networks and communities and resources for each other.
Absolutely.
So it's been wonderful.
That's so exciting. And you just dropped so many gems all at once.
A lot of like after Black Birders Week, the first one happened, a lot of Black, like in different fields, weeks came up. And one of them was Black in Marine Science. So if you're listening and you're someone who is interested in marine science, they formed an entire organization after their week. They have a 501c3, Black in Marine Science. They offer educational opportunities, scuba stuff. I'm not a marine scientist, mentorship, programming, incredible scholarships. So I would connect with them. They're dynamite people doing great work. So I just wanted to throw them out there as an example of like someone who really took it and ran with it.
That's how things spark. Yeah. But it takes courage. It takes a person or a few people to take an idea and believe in that idea and create the spark that leads to everything else. So that's something we always try to leave with anyone who watched these videos. The last EJ Chats guest member we had was Congresswoman Bonnie Watson Coleman, and she was speaking about like her new bill is the Shade Act, because trees, like really helping people recognize we need to plant trees. Trees are such a fundamental piece of the puzzle of life, and making sure our air remains pure and that our water remains pure. So she wants to plant more trees, and just like now you're here planting ideas. Like we want people to plant ideas. So I really do appreciate like as a father of a 5-year-old, 5-year-old little girl, I like that I'm going to be able to show her this video and say, look, baby, that's a scientist and she looks like you. Like that. No. That representation makes me very happy. It truly does. But going to the science conversation, and we were able to have this conversation recently when we were together in Atlanta for a work event, and we were speaking about the framing of environmental justice and the role that science should be playing, but it doesn't play because due to environmental injustices, our data collection methods are impacted. So it's like, just to make sense for some people, it's like we're making decisions based on studies, but because of bias and other reason, those studies didn't take into account important fundamental information. So that means everything else on the other end is going to be skewed or incorrect. So I wanted to, from a scientific background, like see if you could shed a little more insight on that for people, because that's the environmental justice conversation we need to have about science and data. So I wanted to, bring it to a scientist to expound on that a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. And I appreciate you bringing this question up. And I want to start by saying, as you were describing this dynamic, this of course is not unique to environmental work, right? Like
Right.
this shows up in medicine, right? This shows up everywhere where Black people are. We experience these kinds of outcomes that are that further marginalize us because of the foundation is rooted in racism and bias. But one of the really interesting ways that this shows up in wildlife science, environmental science, and I'm using research from Deja Perkins, who is a PhD student at North Carolina State University and has been doing incredible research in the realm of data justice. And she's an ornithologist too. She studies birds. And she revealed this to me. Her master's research was focused on something called eBird. And the cool thing about wildlife science is that you don't have to be a scientist, so to speak. You don't have to have gone to school for biology or anything in particular to participate. And so everyday people can share what, they see a bird, they share it into like this public database called eBird. And I mean, millions of people use this. Okay. It is a widely used platform, and scientists actually use that data to then inform what we know and how we manage birds, what we know about birds, how we manage them. What she found is that places that are wealthier have more data about birds than places that are not as wealthy. And those places also tend to be whiter, right? And I was like, oh my goodness, like this makes sense, but I never would have thought about this until she brought it up to me. So I said, I live in Atlanta. And so I said, based on what she found, I reached out to National Audubon Society. I said, hey, could you guys run some statistics on Atlanta and see what's the relationship? And the reason why I wanted to do it on Atlanta is because Atlanta is very unique. The blackest and sometimes the poorest parts of this city are also the places with the strongest ecology. We have hundreds of acres of old growth forests in like predominantly Black and low wealth communities, right? So like what usually is a relationship where, a lot of the poorer and Blacker areas don't have as much nature, so to speak, or as much green space. It's not true in Atlanta per se. So they ran the data, and it turned out that relationship still held true. The places that were wealthier and also whiter had more data points about birds, more information, more data was collected about birds in wealthier areas. And so if you were to look at a map of the data, because you can see it spatially, you would think, oh, all the birds are in Northeast Atlanta, in Buckhead, in this wealthy part. And there was almost no data in Southwest Atlanta where I live, but I lived there. I mean, I happen to be an ornithologist, so I know that is not reflective of the truth. Most of the birds are in Southwest Atlanta because we have all these old growth forests. We have forest birds, wetland birds, all kinds of birds living where we live. But because the field of wildlife conservation, especially with birds, has not engaged Black and low wealth communities well at all, it looks like there's nothing here, and it's not true. But of course, when we see data, unless you're in the community to know that, you wouldn't know that dynamic is not accurate. And so that would lead people to make decisions about where do we invest resources? Where do we hold bird walks? Where do we do more bird related events and educational outreach, et cetera, et cetera. And so you can see how this builds on itself,
and
right?
then building developments as well. Correct?
Yes, right. Like the way we understand where we decide to place buildings and great infrastructure, right? We base those decisions off of what are we losing by putting this here? If we don't even know what we have to lose, right? Like that's a problem. Right. And so to see that play out in my own field was really a wake-up call for me. So I thank Deja for that. But it shows us that environmental justice, and again, those same communities are the ones that are bearing the heaviest burden of environmental issues, right? So there's all these layers that reinforce the fact that Black and brown communities, low wealth communities are not getting the resources that we need, and we don't have access to the resources that we desire. And so the thing that I'm passionate about is in my work, in my studies, in my science, I am conscious of and factoring centrally into the way that I collect data to ensure that there is data coming from Black and brown communities and also collected by those same communities so that we can have an equitable approach to how we manage our natural resources, where we build, where we don't build, and how we manage those resources moving forward.
How do you know what's being impacted if you don't know what's there?
Right.
That is like, we got to put that on a t-shirt, on a billboard. It's just it's the biggest truth. If you're not investing resources into these communities to know, to have the correct data, when you're building up the nice little new condos that everybody likes. We have no clue what different species we just completely cleared out in that process.
Exactly.
It's a very real thing. So I wanted to thank you, Corina, because you and I had this conversation a few days ago, and yesterday I was on a Federal Bureau of Ocean Energy Management Environmental Justice forum, and I'm having a conversation with those experts, and I said, I want to have a conversation with our offshore wind developers about what studies are being used and what markers are being used. And when we talk about environmental impact study, let me see what are the baseline points of these environmental impacts, because did you determine that? Did you speak to people in the environment about what they need to be paying attention to?
Right.
What kind of relationship was had before you spoke on behalf of a certain community?
Yes.
And coming up with your data points.
Yes.
So I'm grateful from that short conversation with you. It impacted my work immediately. I was able to take that into a federal meeting.
Yeah.
So I think these are things that people need to talk about.
Yeah.
So as the scientist, and you see so many things happening without the input of the scientists, I'm just like a general, how does that make you feel being in this space when you don't see yourself being consulted on things that absolutely you and your counterparts need to be consulted on?
Yeah. Yeah. You know, it's interesting. It's for good reason. Efforts that are for the protection of Black and Brown communities, right, have to come from the community, have to be led by the community, have to follow their priorities, their knowledge, right? And oftentimes sciences of various kinds, again, like I said before, medicine, environmental science, engineering, any number of sciences have been at the expense of our communities. And so to me, this kind of just circles back to the need for scientists that come from our communities, because it's almost like there's constantly this separation between who are the impacted communities and then who are the decision makers, who are the impacted communities and who are the specialists and the scientists, right? And that creates this dissonance where we're constantly being hurt, and then we don't trust these people, right? Exactly. And so that's why I take my position as a Black woman scientist from a low wealth community, from the city, very seriously, to bring these two things together, because the reality is that we do have to watch the data. We need to collect data. We need to collect data in an equitable way that gives us the most accurate understanding of real life and real life impacts. So on every element of the ecosystems we live in, including Absolutely. People, including wildlife. And in order for us to have any hope of success, we have to have Black biologists, we have to have Black engineers, we have to have Black scientists, we have to have Black policy experts, people who live, I don't even want to say in both worlds, it's the same world, but people have different experiences in them and different threats in them. We have to have people with this kind of competency and lived experience, because it's heartbreaking, because I know that our best efforts, if not rooted in environmental justice and equity, will fail. Because Black people are here. You know what I mean? It's not like we're some figment of imagination. We're here. And if we are not taken into consideration and our leadership is not followed, and people pretend we don't exist, like no one's going to win. And so that's why another reason why I'm so adamant about the urgent need for getting our people, our young people, into these expert positions to be able to lead us into the future.
And there's so many gems dropping right now. Like I can't wait to look at this video again, because thank you. But another byproduct of the conversation that we had, you know, I wear a lot of hats. I do a lot of different work in environmental justice space. When I thought I had seen and heard everything, that changed after our conversation. Like I literally had a light bulb moment midway through this Federal Bureau of Ocean Energy Management call, because I was in queue, and I know I was going to speak about having the data from making sure we have correct data when it comes to any project that we're doing. But it hit me that for so long I've been fighting for stakeholder engagement. That's literally been something I've been pushing for in offshore wind and all environmental justice spaces, like the whole gamut, more stakeholder real engagement.
Right.
But the model, I just realized I've been following the wrong model. I've been fighting for stakeholder engagement essentially about what their model has been to finish a project and then bring in the community to give their input on a finished project.
Mm-hmm.
And then it really hit me from thinking about your conversation. It was like, true stakeholder engagement is bringing in stakeholders at the inception of the idea so that their lived experiences and expertise can go into the implementation of the project itself. And it was like, oh. And I was like, oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's what we need to push for. We keep following their orders, their marching orders of coming in on the back end after the cake is already baked. It's like, no, you need the lived experiences of the people who live, because there are going to be things that people who live in the neighborhood know that you didn't learn in school.
Right. Exactly.
So you need that perspective. So
yes.
I literally want to thank you for that conversation, because it has changed my entire advocacy approach. Like it makes it like all along, I'm doing this backwards. I'm fighting to get people to tell me about what you did, which was done incorrectly.
You know, oh my goodness, I'm with you, and I constantly have those light bulb moments too.
It's really been like I would say I'm going to put that on my two biggest wow moments of the last few years. That and the other wow moment was we do a lot of tribal work with our First Nation partners, and the United Nations put into play the free, prior, and informed consent clause when it comes to our Native American First Nation brothers and sisters. And seeing that framework as an environmental justice activist and saying, why are we not doing this? Like, of course, it should be the standard to inform people prior to anything that you're going to do that impact their lives. So it's like seeing that framework and seeing that the United Nations has adopted it. It just like lit a fire under me. Like, this is what we need. Like they've given us the blueprint on how to do this effectively. So I've been on that bullhorn everywhere. Free, prior, 4%. Like, this is what we need to do.
And it was interesting when I, you know, I've heard about free, prior, and informed consent, and like in a research context, like I understand it, but it wasn't until recently that I was like, everywhere, all community engagement,
everywhere.
And it was a light bulb moment for me too. Yes.
Yeah. So anyone who's watching this, Google free, prior, and informed consent, and then you'll say, this is what every community needs. 100%. This should be the standard. Shouldn't just be one community. It should be all. That should be standard operating procedure. 1000% with any work that we do, because it's disrespectful. Like, that's the part when we talk about the visibility of Black people. It is disrespectful for you to do anything that impacts my life without you informing me on what is coming down the pipe. That's disrespectful. And it's time for Black people to demand our respect. Environmental justice is an acknowledgement that I deserve respect at a base level. At a base level, I deserve respect. And now I'm going to demand respect. So I hope more people understand that this is disrespectful. Like, all these things that people are doing, polluting your communities, putting different things into your water so you can't even have clean water. You can't even breathe. It's mothers who are having low birth weight and losing their children just because they breathe in the neighborhood they live in. That's disrespectful. So I want people to be offended by what's happening in their communities. Be mad about it. Don't be happy about it. Be mad about it. But again, I am really excited that you took some time out. You truly are, and you're extremely humble, and I respect that. But at the end of the day, you're a big deal, Corina, and I want to give you your flowers. I thank you for the trail that you're blazing. I've seen you in person have so much empathy and warm, and people can come up to you, you're approachable. And I really appreciate that, because a lot of people who are in the moment that you're in, they lose their head. So in the moment you're in, you're still humble, you're still compassionate, still down to earth. And I appreciate that, because that's how we bring more people in, is that they see that we're approachable. So I appreciate, who you are, and continuing to be, and broadcasting positivity. That's really good. So before we go, I just want to give you an opportunity to just let people know about different things you have on the horizons, any birding activities that's coming up, and lastly, to just say, we need the next Corinas. If you see your child or your nephew or your niece like watching the flight of birds or being outside and they're just fascinated with wildlife, there are communities that we need to connect them with early, and to get them involved in all of these white organizations that we work with. If you want to give back, let's provide some scholarship opportunities for young Black people to get into sciences. That's how we fix these problems. If we have people look like us who bring that perspective into the data collection, so that we don't miss anything important when it comes to our study. So the floor is yours. And again, thank you so much, Corina.
Thank you so much, Marcus. And I want to say I'm so honored by your kind words. It means the world. And I think the same of you. I being able to work in the same organization with you and learn from you from a distance, from up close, any way that I can. I truly am taking notes on your life and your methods. And so I thank you for being an example for me and for so many others who are coming up in this field. So I greatly appreciate you. So there's an organization that I have been a part of. It's a Christian climate group. So I'm a person of faith, Christian faith. And some of the work that I've been doing over the past few years has been around mobilizing faith communities, and in particular Christian faith communities, to kind of as part of their faith walk in the church, outside of the church, in the community, to act on climate change and encourage folks to speak out to their representatives, to encourage action on climate change. And we have several fellowships at this organization. So the organization is called Young Evangelicals for Climate Action. You don't have to be evangelical. I'm not evangelical, but it's funded by the Evangelical Environmental Network. But there's a fellowship that I'm helping to lead called the Community Fellowship Program, and it's for Black and Brown young people who are of Christian faith, who are interested in kind of learning more about advocacy, community organizing, addressing issues that are important to their communities as it relates to environment. It doesn't have to be climate change. And so applications for that just opened up, and I can send that link to you if folks are interested in that. That same organization also has college fellowships for folks who are specifically in college.
We can put that in the YouTube link description too.
Okay.
Yeah.
I want to highlight again Black and Marine Science. That organization has ongoing opportunities for connecting with Black researchers. And even if you don't think you want to be a marine scientist, I would highly recommend plugging into that network, because they have a lot of information to offer about interest in wildlife sciences broadly. And it's a really well-organized group of people. So I would highly recommend looking them up. Trying to think about anything else.
Any way you can lean people toward any birding clubs or groups?
Yeah. So I would encourage folks. So across the country, there are a variety of kind of city or state specific birding groups. Black Birders Week this year is like the weekend of Memorial Day, and there are a lot of events happening across the country. I'm not one of the organizers this year, but stay tuned online for events that are happening kind of formally as part of Black Birders Week, and then locally. I'm from Philadelphia, and there's a really dope, if you're interested in traveling just a little ways over the Delaware River, if you're in Jersey, there is a really awesome group called In Color Birding Club. They host really dynamite, awesome, welcoming birding trips almost like multiple times a month, sometimes every week. So I would highly recommend connecting with them. And there will be a lot of programs happening during Black Birders Week, which again is Memorial Day weekend. If you're in the Atlanta area, I will be having bird walks starting in the spring in Washington Park, which is the first public green space that Black people were allowed to visit in Georgia. And so those bird walks will be starting up in the spring.
What?
Yeah.
Oh, historical context too.
Yeah.
Wow.
A lot of great history, and a lot of great birds. So that's what those are some of the little programs or opportunities that are coming down the pipeline for folks if you're interested. And if you want to reach out, if you have questions about wildlife science, environmental justice, or anything that you think I could possibly offer any insight on, please feel free to reach out to me on social media. As Marcus mentioned, my Twitter handle is hood_naturalist. On Instagram, it's hood_naturalist. And so you can, and my email is corinanewsome@gmail.com. I would be happy to speak with you or your kids or anybody who might be interested in learning more about what we've talked about today.
Well, I would again like to say thank you on behalf of the ancestors. You're making them proud. So keep up the good work. And for the New Jersey State Conference NAACP Environmental and Climate Justice Committee, we want to say thank you. Thank you for taking the time out and joining us for this installment of EJ Chats with the NAACP. We thank you. Thank you for what you're doing. Thank you for what you're going to do. We're also most grateful for what you've inspired to happen, the wheels you've now set in motion, the ripple effects of the conversation that you had today. So, Corina, thank you so much for your time. Keep up the good work, and please don't never stop what you're doing, because we need you. So have a great rest of your week. Have a great weekend. And thank you so much once again.
Thank you, Marcus.
All right, have a good one.